Okay, I'm going to be trying my new intro audio. Let me know what you think. There we go. Slow on it. Yeah, that sounds pretty good. How's it going, you sons of guns? Questing Dragon here. And today we're going to be talking about mysterious polygonal wall construction all over the world. Not everywhere, but far enough apart that it's a curiosity. How did these people come up with this building construction type, which seems very nonsensical? Like, it's not efficient. It doesn't seem like something you would just come up with as the best way to do things. So, without further ado, let's get into it. This first wall, I'm not going to tell you guys where these are from right away. I want you guys to first have a chance to let me know what country we're in, and you can guess at home. All of these are from the same country. Let me know what you think. So this is what I'm talking about with polygonal walls. They are not the way we build masonry walls, which is normally we have cast into a certain size, bricks or some kind of blocks. They're consistent size, and then we stack in nice even rows, oftentimes with mortar. And, you know, that's a typical brick wall you've seen, or masonry wall, etc. The thing about these walls is every piece is a different shape, and it was cut to fit exactly with everything around it, meaning that each piece had to be individually cut into place, which isn't really a very simple thing. No one really knows why people chose to do this in the ancient past. It's a mystery. So, you know, does this look easy? I mean, can you imagine doing this? Each piece you're scribing into place. I mean, I've done enough carpentry to know how to scribe maybe like some trim around a door or something, or around an odd shape in the wall. And this is rock. This is stone. A lot of the stone that you're going to be seeing today is pretty hard on the Mohs scale of hardness. Most of these are going to be between a 5 and an 8. Although some of it's limestone, so you're looking at like a 3 or a 4 there. But either way, kind of mind-blowing. So any guesses as to where we've been so far in those pictures? If you guessed ancient Greece, you are correct. That was ancient Greece. It's one example of a place where people decided to build, well, they also call cyclopian walls, especially in places like ancient Greece, where they clearly believed in Cyclops. The stories of these giant creatures passed down through mythology, and the stories of how these walls were built often relate to giants and Cyclops. So cyclopean walls is a term that people use. They also use that for a lot rougher construction than what we're going to be looking at today. But if you guessed Greece, you are correct. So now we're going to a different country. Okay? Let me know if you know where this is. Similar. This is rough. It's on the water. Here's another example. Ooh, it's so tiny. You can see my cyclopean wall in the background there. There we go. Here's another example. People built on top of pre-existing ancient walls, which, believe it or not, happens a lot all over the world. Yeah, some of these are really small, so it just changes. Oh, you guys can't even see that. I'll move my face somehow, I guess. I don't even know how I do that. There we go. Oh, yeah, weird. Polygonal walls. Anyone know where we are yet? No? This has been Italy. That first picture might have been a clue. Built right up off the water. Anyway, Italy, yeah. Ancient constructions, polygonal walls. I couldn't tell you much about Italy other than that they attribute over a dozen different cultures to building these cyclopian walls from different time periods. Cultures such as the Romans, the Etruscans, the Pelasgians, the Herniki, the Volsci, the Samnites, the Nuragic, and the Sardinian. So, and there's more than that. I just listed a handful. And just like in a lot of places, people don't really agree on who built these polygonal walls, but they are mysterious. And again, for many reasons, it's not that easy to make them like this. Every stone you would have to keep putting back up into place, marking where it needs to be changed to match those around it, pulling it back down. And for the case of some of the larger stones, well, it just seems not easy. So now let's take a look at Malta. Okay. Oops, I forgot to let you guys guess where it is, but this is Malta. You probably would have known this if you're an ancient guy, because this stuff is a little bit different looking. I put in a picture like this just to maybe remind everyone that Malta is a place that people believe giants built a lot of this as well. A lot of the stones are very large, and some of the mythologies surrounding giants in Malta are very interesting. You should definitely, if you're interested in giants, which you might be if you start watching my channel, take a look into Malta and some of the stories that people have told, some of the mythologies surrounding it. Very interesting. And let's see, we got one more from Malta here just to showcase that they are building with polygonal stone construction. So very odd indeed. Speaking of giants, now this is where things are going to get like, oh my God, what is this guy showing me? Is this real? No. I am struggling to get my picture to come up here. Here we go. Huh. There we go. So these are really small, unfortunately. So you're not going to be able to see them as good as I was hoping. I'll move my face out of the way. We don't need this guy. We don't need this guy here. So this is an example of another place where giants are supposedly involved in the building. Some people relate it to the Bible and maybe where the Nephilim touched down. But this is Lebanon, and we're looking specifically at Baalbek. And these don't come out to look as polygonal as some of the other walls that we already looked at. But when you take a closer look at these, you see, obviously there's some massive stones. We're looking at the trilithon stones here, which have these dimensions on them. They're, crazy big stones. They're 5 meters tall, 21 meters long, and they're 7 meters off the ground. This is supposedly built by the Romans, although most historians who study this site would disagree with that. It does not match the other construction of the Romans. And also, fun fact, these are the largest stones that we've ever found in any construction on the planet. People put them at between 900 and 1,100 tons is their estimate for these stones. So that's a mystery in itself. And how did they lift a 900-ton stone 7 meters, 21 feet roughly off the ground? You've got me. I don't know. I would say I don't know if the Romans did. Maybe someone else did. But it's very interesting. So these are considered polygonal stones, though, because there's so many different sizes, and it seems like they were cutting the stones to kind of fill whatever gap was left. And if you look closer at it, I wasn't able to find the best pictures online, but you will see more of the polygonal kind of construction here. So it's odd. All right, this one's going to be hard. I don't know if anyone's going to get this. Let me know if you guys recognize what country these ones are from. And there's a specific reason I chose to look at these. So the stone walls here, they're... Ooh, that's very nice looking. This is a very nice looking wall here. Unfortunately for you viewers, it is doing all sorts of funny things with resizing on my screen because of the quality and sizing of these images. But if you haven't guessed already, we are looking at stone walls in Turkey. Okay? So this is an important fact because most of these stone walls are not that old, at least the way that historians tell these stories. We're looking at like some of them in these European countries, and now we're in Turkey, but we're looking at, I guess they say, a couple thousand years old, 2,000 to 3,000 years old max, usually less. But most of you ancient history buffs out there know about Göbekli Tepe and Karahan Tepe and the whole Tas-Tepler region of Turkey. And if you know about these places, you know that they are dated to about 10 to 11,000 years ago, roughly 9,000 BC, give or take, depending on the site. At these Karahan Tepe, Göbekli Tepe, Tas-Tepler sites, in Turkey, they have mortar built into the walls at these sites. So reasonably, you could assume that in Turkey, they understood about mortar, probably in other places in the world too, long before they started building these polygonal stone walls. So why would they go through the trouble to use or to make mortarless walls, which are obviously much more difficult, if they could use mortar and just stick them together and they wouldn't have to fit together so nicely? That's one of the big mysteries. I'm going to show you really quickly a map that I made, and this should give you an idea of kind of where these sites are in relation to each other. So far, we started looking at Greece, and then we came over to Italy, and we were looking at Malta, and then we're in Turkey now. And I did make this map with these marks on it, just to show you guys kind of where we're moving around. So I could understand how these cultures that we've looked at so far, and a couple of the next ones, oh yeah, we looked at Lebanon too, right? I could understand how they were talking to each other. They're close enough. You don't have to have, vessels, like seafaring vessels capable of going across the Atlantic or Pacific Ocean to get from place to place around here. So I could understand how ancient people moved this knowledge around and they taught each other about the polygonal walls. Why they did it, I don't know, because it seems so much more difficult than any other masonry construction. But it makes sense. I made this map, and it was able to put onto Google Earth, which I thought was pretty cool. So here's the world, chilling. Some of you will know the reference. So here we are. Now, I'm going to skip Egypt. Obviously, there's some crazy stuff going on in Egypt, and I'm going to save that one. That's kind of special. So I understand how they could have known about polygonal stone construction in Egypt, but there's other issues, and we'll get back to that. But let's get around the world, or actually we'll go this way. On the other side of Asia, we're going to look closer at Japan. Okay, so there's actually several places in Japan. They didn't all come up on my thing here, but we've got several places. Japan is a place that has polygonal walls, and a lot of people like Jimmy Corsetti and many others who are into these kind of ancient mysteries have pointed out that the polygonal walls in Japan look a lot like some of the other ones around the world. There are actually some pretty good ones in Japan. So let's go back and take a look at our Japanese sources here. Okay, so here's an example of a polygonal wall in Japan. And some of these blocks are going to be pretty big, and most of them are made out of andesite, which is about 6 or 7 on the Mohs scale of hardness. So fairly difficult stone to carve. And here you can see several examples of the Japanese using polygonal stone masonry to build walls of different kinds. Sure. So one thing, oh, I see that's an example. You can't even see it. I got to click ahead because I'm sorry, my stuff is out of order. So this is what they call the octopus stone in Japan. It's a giant stone. People commonly refer to it in polygonal walls, and they're like, how did they move a stone this big? Well, something that you should be aware of is that this stone is not that thick. It's really more of a slab. It's only a couple meters, or a meter, maybe a meter and a half thick. So not quite as impressive as some of the other sites that we're going to look at. You're going to notice that these sites are going to get increasingly mysterious and hard to explain as time goes on in my video. So from here, you know, we can look at the Osaka, or not Osaka, I'm sorry, this is the Imperial Palace in Tokyo. A wall here. This is beautiful polygonal stone wall here. But in Japan, they have great written record of the evolution of this technique. And it would seem that this technique developed as a result of the ingenuity and progress of Japanese stonemasons over time. So at first, it's much rougher. Nozurazumi is what they called it. It definitely gets better. Uchikomi Hagi is some of what we were just looking at. And then the best examples in Japan are going to be Kirikomi Hagi. Okay? I apologize about my pronunciation for anything I'm trying to say on this channel. I'm doing my best. But this construction style, you can often see that there is chisel marks. They actually did this as an effect on the top of it. They would call it a finish called either hatsuri or sudare. And I do want to give credit to the Curious Being channel on YouTube. This young lady did break down the differences in the construction styles in Japan for these polygonal walls. And a lot of this information about Japan I did learn from her, and I do want to shout out to her. It was a great video. So these are more examples from Japan. You can see it's pretty good. It's better than some of the stuff we saw in other countries, but you're going to see there's a lot better in other places in the world. Oftentimes in Japan, these are used as fortifying walls at the entrance to temples or somewhere that it would be visually aesthetic for people to see. And then on other parts of the temple where people aren't going to see as much, they will resort to much simpler building styles. So as far as we know, the nicest forms of this, which I forget what she called that. We're going to go back because the Kirikomi Hagi, the nicest form of this, that is something that didn't really come up until the 1700s, but it's well documented. And even before that, from as far back as the mid-Edo period of Japan, they were talking about this stuff being made. And then, like I said, in like the early 1700s, it's well documented that they are building these things and getting better at it. So the history in Japan of this construction seems to be pretty specific. So when you look back at our map, it is kind of like, okay, so even though people are way out here, they still seem to be able to figure this out on their own. They weren't necessarily connected to the other cultures we're talking about, but they sorted this out on their own, and they built this way to look impressive, especially at palaces and castles and things like this, at the entrances most often, just to kind of make it seem more awesome. But from Japan, I'm actually going to travel to some of the greatest examples of polygonal stone construction. Okay? And a lot of you probably already know where I'm going with this. Where in the world is South America? Here it is. So, now, these are a bunch of different places in Peru where there's polygonal stone walls. Okay? We're talking about Sacsayhuaman, we're talking about Machu Picchu, we're talking about Ollantaytambo, and several others. The city of Cusco, of course. So let's take a look at some of these pictures, and we'll figure out what's going on here. All right, I'm getting a little better at these pictures. I am sorry, people. Bear with me. I know it's not the most fun to watch someone struggle on the computer. So here we go. Now, this is where it gets super mysterious, and I would say with very little hesitancy that the history books have this wrong. They are saying right now that the Inca civilization built all of these different polygonal walls in the area that they call the Sacred Valley, which would include Cusco, Machu Picchu, Ollantaytambo, Sacsayhuaman, and others. But these stone walls, as you can see from this first example, are extremely well fitted. This is from the city of Cusco, where they took existing megalithic stone construction and built many different buildings on top of it. In fact, there was so much megalithic stonework in the city of Cusco that they raised the actual floor level of the city several feet. I think it's something like 10 or 12 feet, just to bury a lot of the megalithic stones that were there because they couldn't easily move them. And when you walk around the city of Cusco, you'll see some of these megalithic stones that were discarded from the walls, just sitting in between all the buildings because they're really, really heavy and they are very expensive to move, so they just leave them. But these walls are very impressive. People travel from all over the world to look at these walls. Masons frequently post videos about how these don't really make sense for a number of reasons. I couldn't tell you exactly how they did this, but I'm pretty confident that the Incan people, who were supposedly operating from the 14th to 15th century AD, built all of these stone walls. I don't know if you know anything about the Inca, and I do not want to slam their culture because they built some beautiful things at all of these sites. But you can clearly tell when it's their work and when it's an older, more megalithic style of construction. And you're going to see these differences several times in these pictures. I'll keep clicking backwards. So here's a good example. So this is at the Cuchicancha. I don't know if I'm saying that right. In Peru. And you can see that at one time, someone was building beautiful, tightly fitting polygonal stonework. Again, they're not cast in the same shape every time, and they're built to fit what was put in last, every single block. But then above it, you can see what I would say the Inca did, which, they used pounding stones and very simple means to basically make rough stones and stack them. Also mortarless most of the time, but not always. But it's very rough. Just looking at it, no one would think that within 200 years a society lost the ability to make such beautiful stonework and then built right on top of it with such crude stonework. This is another image from the Kusikancha. So you can see again what I'm talking about here. There's a clear distinction between the two building styles, and I would say it is very likely that the Inca did not build this. I'm pretty confident to say that from as many videos as I've watched on this subject. We're back to Peru. We've been in Peru. We're back to Cusco, Peru, and right now we're looking at another wall in the Coricancha, and at the bottom of it you can see what we're going to also look at a little bit, which is nubs, these mysterious things that just seem to be, they call them nubs, but they're just small protrusions that are kind of like roughly sticking out from the walls, and they're not on every stone, but they're on a lot of the stones, and this occurs on this kind of megalithic construction in different parts of the world. It's not just Peru. So the nubs are their own mystery. I'm going to save that for another day, but I did want to point them out on some of these photos that we're looking at. Here's another example in Cusco of the megalithic type of polygonal walls, and then the Inca style of polygonal walls right above it. And then the people that live there now, they built around both of those, and they built on both of those, and this is a modern type of building on top of it. It's very interesting. This is an example of something else that we see at different parts of the world, and so I wanted to mention it, but this is also on the polygonal stonework in Peru, is what people call scoop marks or scrape marks. It almost looks like there was a tool that was so big that they were able to scoop out big chunks of the stone at once. No one really knows how this was achieved, and people disagree that that's even what we're looking at. But if you are interested in the scoop marks, I would advise you to look at them, especially at the Aswan Quarry in Egypt, because there are some of the most pronounced scoop marks in the world. But the scoop marks can also be seen at Stonehenge on the stone circle, some of the stones at the stone circle at Stonehenge, and many other sites. These scoop marks do seem to be evidence of some kind of methodology that they were using that we don't understand today. Whether or not it was a lost technology, certainly we don't understand it. So you can see on this picture, which is still in the city of Cusco, Peru, that there's more of these nubs that appear randomly. There's a lot of different theories about how people built these stones, but or cut them and shaped them and did all of this. But all of these pictures we've been looking at are in Peru, and these are definitely the most, I shouldn't say definitely, but they're some of the most mysterious in the world. Egypt's, we're going to get there. But the way that these were built, it just doesn't seem to make sense. And so you know how before I said people have to take down the stone each time and then scribe it to match what's around it, and then put it back up, see if it fits next to what's on the left and the right and the bottom. It's a little off. You bring it back down, you chisel a little bit off. It's not like cutting with wood today, where we would use like a saw, power saw, and so you have to scribe it once, you cut it exactly out, whatever, boom. When you're marking something on stone and scribing it, and then you're coming down and using stone or copper chisels or maybe bronze, they're not going to be able to do it in one go and then put it back up and this is in place. If that was the methodology that they used, then it seems like they just kind of messed that up a little bit. It doesn't seem like that is the answer, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. The biggest reason is because some of these stones are massive. There's a couple nubs in the back left corner of that wall. Here's another example of the Inca building on top. And this is just a big picture of Machu Picchu, in case you didn't know what that looked like. And I'm in Machu Picchu today. What? And that's why I'm so tired. I'm like a little bit hard to talk today. Hiking up here was something else. But these stones at the different sites like Machu Picchu, Ollantaytambo, Cusco, a lot of them are limestone. So that is less on the Mohs scale. You're looking at between 3 to 5 on the Mohs scale, depending on the kind of limestone that it is. But, however, some of these stones are dark basalt and andesite, which is much, much harder and heavier also, if we're talking about moving them from far away. And if you look into these sites, you'd know that they did move, at least, for Machu Picchu to the quarry, they moved those 22 miles, from the top of one mountain down into a valley and then up onto the site of Machu Picchu. And some of these are up to 200 tons. This isn't a video about how they move the stones. That's its own mystery. But they not only moved them, which was such a feat to get here 22 miles away, some of these stones, but then they were able to cut them so precisely and put them up into place when, again, on average, they're like 30, 40 tons at Machu Picchu, Ollantaytambo, these megalithic ones, but some of them do reach, 150 to 200 tons. That is inexplicable, unexplainable. So can you picture someone taking one of those stones off multiple times and putting it back up? Like, it just doesn't seem to make sense. It seems that they had an easier methodology to do these. And since I already brought her up, the Curious Being channel, she had the idea that these were cast, that these were basically a geopolymer, a form of concrete that they somehow cast to basically the shape that they wanted, and then put it up into place while it was still soft and not fully hardened, applied pressure so it fit to everything around it, and then it hardened. And I don't buy that for multiple reasons. But I think I admire anyone trying to explain this, so I'm not trying to put her down at all. My thoughts on that would be, if you have a cast, how many times are you going to make a cast? You know what a cast is like. You want a brick mold. That's what I mean, a mold. So if you are going to make a brick, you make one brick mold, and then you just keep putting in the material and it hardens, and then you have like 1,000 bricks from that one mold. But if you were going to cast stones that were different sizes, you would need to make a new mold for every stone. And that just doesn't seem to make sense to me. And also, when people study these stones under microscopes and geologists come and do tests and all this kind of stuff, there is nothing that indicates that this is a geopolymer, that this was a man-made, liquid that hardened, basically like cement. Or I don't know if you call cement a liquid, but you know what I'm saying, like a liquidish thing that you can have harden it over time. That's a geopolymer. Cement is a geopolymer. So I don't believe that is true. I have heard enough people talk and who have looked at these stones, and they do not seem to be man-made. They seem to be natural limestone, natural basalt, natural andesite. So I couldn't tell you how they did it. But one of the reasons that they say that is you can see in these stones in the last couple pictures that they kind of like pillow out. So like where the seams are, it kind of like comes in, and then like towards the middle of the stone, it's like wider out from the surface of the wall. And that is a pretty regular feature of a lot of these stone walls in Peru. And so I can understand why she feels that way, because if you had a soft stone and you pressed it into place to fit all those joints together, maybe that would leave like a kind of a smushing effect where it pillowed out on the actual surface of the wall. sure, I can understand why she says that, but I just, it doesn't answer enough of the questions. It satisfies some of the mysteries here, but in my opinion, not enough to be a full answer. Here's another example of megalithic construction that is underneath what we would call the rougher, later work of the Incas. I mean, oop, too much. Look at this joinery. I mean, what? Loincloth Inca people made? No, again, no offense. They're awesome. But like, I just can't picture it. Like, visualize an indigenous culture with very little technology as we would consider today making this. Oh, what? And here's some nubs. Here's some nubbity nubs. What are these? Why are the nubs here? Some people think they were to put these stones into place, but that seems to be disproven because some of the ones that fallen off, you can see that they had these nubs on like other sides of the stone, which wouldn't have been reachable from lifting it. There's also many stones that don't have the nubs that are big stones, so it doesn't seem like that was even needed. Some people suggest maybe these originally were not as ground down, and maybe they were projections of some kind that held timbers, or they, hooks for their coats on the wall, or maybe even they were decorative and they're just worn down now. I don't know. There's other places that have not quite nubs, but they have faces on things that protrude like this, such as Bolivia, which we will get to. But I mean, come on, this is Sacsayhuaman. These stones are huge. How are they doing this? It's just mind blowing. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'm just unaware, and maybe all the masons who look at this and all of the like geologists that look at this stuff, they just don't know what they're talking about. But right now it seems like people do not agree at all on how this was made. And when you look it up in Wikipedia, it's like, yeah, this was the Inca. I don't know how. Like, explain it to me. I'd love to understand how this was made. It's so mysterious. Here's a little nub on the corner there, a little nublet. Oh, a big nub. Wow. He's happy to see us. More polygonal stone construction, tight fitting. People describe that you cannot fit a human hair between these seams more often than not. Certainly not a sheet of paper. And we looked at Japan already, and just like what the Curious Being channel, she thought as well, the Japanese construction, as good as it is, and it is damn good, it's nothing compared to this. They're not the same. This is too large. This is too heavy. This is too precise, and it fits together far too well. Not to mention that the pillowing element of it is not ever seen in Japan. And so that is very odd. You can see the pillowing effect that I'm talking about quite well on the stones on the left, and how at the seams they are receded back further, and they, at the center of the stones, they kind of pillow out. You can see what I'm talking about. So Peru is one of the biggest mysteries in the world for a lot of reasons. A lot of people think of Egypt when they think of ancient mysteries. Start looking into Peru. Holy moly. It's just mind-blowing. I mean, I wonder all the time how this was done, but also who did it. And it just doesn't seem to be like the best way to do it if you were trying to do it, unless you had maybe methodology, technology, something that we don't know about now. Or do we? No, we don't, but maybe somebody does. But who? I don't know. Don't ask me. But somebody maybe does know. Let's see. We're going to go to Tiwanaku in Bolivia real quick, because I do want to show you guys basically what those ones look like. It's a little different. So this is another location in South America. We're talking about Tiwanaku. It's a very famous site, and there are some polygonal stone walls here. Some of you are going to be disappointed that I didn't show some of the more precise masonry of Tiwanaku, but it wasn't really polygonal walls, so I didn't. But there is some incredibly precise stonework at Tiwanaku. It's maybe the best in the world from ancient cultures. But these are the things I was talking about. Maybe the nubs were something like this in the past, where you've got some like basically faces. Yeah, that's not going to do it. You basically got some faces that are like protruding from different blocks, and they seem a little bit random, but like it kind of reminds me of the nubs. Maybe in the past, the nubs that we're seeing at some of these other sites were faces like this, and then over time, people like didn't like that guy. It was his face, so they mashed it off with a rock, or maybe it was just weathered enough that there's no face. I don't know. Just a thought. Were the nubs faces like that? I don't know. Maybe not. This is Tiwanaku. Just more examples of the walls here. They're not nearly as precise as what you see in Peru for the polygonal walls. But it's still worth looking at them because they are... see, this is getting more precise, but these do look like more regular blocks. They are all a different size, but they have continuous rows, so at least they're the same, like, consistent width and height. So, not as mysterious as in Peru. But we are almost to Egypt. We got one more stop before we go to Egypt. And I'm going to see if you guys know where we are here. Okay? Where are we here? Anyone? Class? Anyone? Oh? Is this going to give you a little clue ski? This looks a lot like Peru, actually, or parts of Egypt when you look at the stonework here. But we are on Easter Island, way out in the Pacific Ocean. Pretty much not next to anything. But these people were moving large basalt stones and then stacking them with precision that is very similar to Peru. How? Here's another image of where that is in the middle of the ocean. Not near anything. You've heard of Easter Island, too. I mean, if you haven't, these are the Easter Island Moai statues. Also, Easter Island is called Rapa Nui, depending on what you want to call it. It's owned by Chile now, which is crazy. I was trying to find it on maps earlier, and it kept being like, Chile? You mean Chile? And I'm like, no, it's not Chile. It's in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. But they own it. It's like a territory, I guess. I don't know. So, anyway, these are the Moai statues. At first, they thought they were just heads, but after they dug them out, they realized that they were full-body statues. And they even built some polygonal walls that looks like they repurposed one of the Moai heads in it at one point. But, yeah, that's Easter Island. So, before we get to Egypt, let's go back and look at our map for a second and just see where we are. So we were here in Peru. We looked at Bolivia. Tiwanaku is obviously pretty close to some of these other sites. So now, where is Easter Island? Oh my God, did I not put it on here? Oh, nope, I did. There it is. So, yeah, way out here. Way out here. Easter Island. What is going on? Like, actually, how do these people have the same building style as people in Peru? Like, I get that today we could get on a ship and we could just be like, boom, we're there, we're here. But they were not supposed to have that type of, the Inca in particular, were not supposed to have that type of seafaring capabilities. And it's kind of a very odd thing that they have such similar stone construction all the way out in the Pacific Ocean on Rapa Nui. It's odd. Oh, man, confusing. So let's go back where I promised you we were going to end up. We're going to go to Egypt. And I'm primarily going to be looking at the Valley Temple of Khafra, although some people call it the Sphinx Temple. But really the Sphinx Temple is the Sphinx enclosure, which is just a wall around the Sphinx, and that doesn't have the type of construction I'm talking about. But directly next to that, at the Giza Plateau, is the Valley Temple of Khafra, and that is what we're going to be looking at now, as far as what we're doing. What did I block my other guy here? Yeah, I did. Oh, yeah. Okay. So let's go to Egypt, shall we? Okay. So at first, you're going to be like, these aren't polygonal walls. Look at how they wrap this corner. Look at, just take a look at that. Why? Are they just trying to make things hard for themselves? Are they showing off? Why would you do this at a corner? You can see the seam runs up the side here. You can see the seam runs up here and then another seam here, but they wrap the corner, like one block wraps the corner. And so when you look at this from other angles, if you were on the other side of this wall, you can see that one block wraps around the other wall. Very strange. Here's some more examples of the polygonal stonework. It's not exactly like what we were looking at before, but you see that they cut each stone to match what was around it. It's not like these were the same blocks that they just made 3 feet by 2 feet by 1 foot and just keep pumping them out. Nope. Every block seems to have been made specifically for the place that it is. These are really tight. They probably are a little bit tighter than a lot of the stuff in Peru, although it's hard to compare because they're both such tight constructions. This doesn't have the pillowing right here, although some places in Egypt do. This doesn't have the nubs, although some places in Egypt do. Why am I saying that this is probably the hardest construction out of all of the polygonal walls that we saw today? Because this is rose granite, sometimes called red granite. That's like an 8 on the Mohs scale of hardness. Granite has chunks of quartz crystal in it and other hard elements that make it basically a mason's nightmare because they have to deal with their chisel interacting different hardnesses and different types of stone, which is how the composition of granite is. What? Why? There, and also in Egypt where they made this is from the Old Kingdom, which is like the very first construction styles. It's either pre-dynastic or Old Kingdom, depending on who you talk to. And then it got worse over time, kind of like the Inca, where after they were using granite, people built on top of it with alabasta. And alabasta is a much harder stone, much more easily workable. People work it with stone tools and copper tools today and show you how to do it right in Egypt. And the Egyptians were phenomenal builders, even the ones who did the constructions out of alabasta and limestone. Almost everything in Egypt from the ancients is incredible. But this rose granite, and the red granite, this stuff is so hard. And not only that, but this was brought from, I got to look at my notes here because I had to write this down. It's so, oh, no. I know what I did here. I put it on the thing. So we're talking about, which one is here? from Cairo, which is basically where these things are, to Aswan Quarry, which is the quarry that we are positive that this granite came from, you're looking at 745 kilometers, 463 miles. And some of these stones are upwards of 50 to 100 tons that are in the temple here. Almost all of them are 30 to 40 tons. Granite is, or not all of them, but all the larger ones, or more. Granite's very heavy as well as very hard. 463 miles away. I'm not going to go too far into how they moved them. Just want you to know that. So part of this is not only were these people building such strange construction that is difficult, seemingly for no reason. It's much easier to just make blocks the same size and stack them. Also, they definitely had mortar and knew what mortar was in Egypt, but they seemingly didn't even need to use it because they could make such precisely fitting hard stone granite blocks. Blows my mind. Really does. Let's look at a few more pictures before I pass you guys off to... Here, what am I talking about here? Can't even find my thing. Oh, here it is. So, yeah, this is the confusing stuff. Here's another picture. Oh, wow. This is another one of the wrapping the corner. This is granite. No problem. We'll just keep taking it up and down and chiseling away. You got videos showing people how they used granite, and a lot of the times what they're doing is like copper saws, rubbing them back and forth to kind of show today how they did this on granite, and they put sand in it to kind of as like an abrasive, and they'll get like 2 or 3 inches and they'll be like, look at what we did. It only took us 2 or 3 days. Are you kidding? There's so many blocks. How are they doing this if it took that long, 2 or 3 days for 2 men to saw a line 2 or 3 inches down? Look up Mark Lehner and Zahid Hawass proving this in a documentary series they made a while ago. It's honestly a joke. It's like, you didn't prove anything. You just showed that this is like insane. That why would they ever do this? All right, I'm almost done. My conclusion about what we've looked at so far is that we don't really know how they did this anywhere in the world, but it's a lot easier to believe that they did basically what happened in Japan in ancient Greece, and then it spread out from there. I can buy that. It's not that hard for me to basically like come to terms with that. Sure, someone figured that out and they wanted to do it. Maybe they thought it looked cool and other people around them started doing it, and it was really hard. It took them several generations to make a wall like that, but it was like something they chipped away at. It was like a hobby project because, like, what were they doing? Sure, I can see that, especially because a lot of these cultures are so close. But the real mystery is when you go to Egypt, because it's just so freaking precise and it's made out of granite. And then when you go to Peru, I don't feel like we have the answers in Bolivia of how these ones were built. So I would conclude and say we need to keep searching. We need to keep looking. We need to get real professional geologists, stonemasons. We need to get anyone who is related to these fields out there to study this. It does not seem like we have even close to a satisfactory answer, which makes me think that we have a lost chapter of our history, possibly a lost civilization that were involved in these places. And then Rapa Nui is so similar to Peru that it seems like another example of an ancient seafaring culture that could bring these things to and from Peru. Before I finish, I will say a lot of people would argue with me that the places in Japan, a lot of these castles, the oldest stones that are polygonal were built on by people who took credit for it, and that the oldest polygonal stone constructions in Japan are still mysterious. I don't know enough about it, and I could not find enough pictures to give that theory enough credit right now. So I just want to mention that. Lastly, I'm going to just tell you a quick fun theory that people have regarding these, and you please make up your own mind about what this means. But all right, where do you think we are now? This is Mars. People think that some of these polygonal shaped images that have been taken from Mars rovers are somehow related to the polygonal walls that are mysterious on our planet. I'm going to have to strongly disagree. These, pretty much every time to me, these seem like natural formations. This to me looks like erosion patterns, shifting tectonic plates combined with erosion from the very little wind that there is on Mars. Maybe. But there are quite a few examples of these polygonal ridges and polygonal sorts of shapes that are found in images from Mars. And so people have gone to town with the theories about how this must have been Martians that built Ollantaytambo or Sacsayhuaman or Machu Picchu, and I don't buy it. I don't believe in that, but I wanted to mention that as a finisher to show you that there are some things I'm not willing to entertain, and that it just does not seem like there is any real evidence that that's true, other than looking at shapes that you would call polygonal and saying that they're related to structures on Earth. Baloney. I think that's baloney. But I don't know. What do you guys think? Let me know. I'm sorry that this one took so long. I actually worked on this way too long. It took me so long to sort out some of this stuff here with how to get all these pictures on and how to go through them and show you guys at the same time, and how to make the map that I made for this presentation to kind of show you the different sites and how far away they are from each other. So my apologies. I do think that my videos will get better over time as I learn to use my software more, but hang in there. This has been the Questing Dragon. I love you guys. Stick with me. Stick with these mysteries. Over time,